welcome to the True to Life podcast. In this interview episode, I'm joined by Kaleigh Doyle, a trainer here at HNU, then transferred to art after everything with her school came to be how it was. We're super happy to have you here today, so thank you so much for taking the time and joining me. Just to get started, could you just introduce yourself, talk about your school background, where you're at now, and some things like that?
Yeah, so my name is Kaleigh Doyle. I used to be a strength and conditioning coach at Holy Names University, which is where I met a lot of the student athletes here. I work at Academy of Art now as a strength and conditioning coach. I work with baseball, volleyball, men and women's golf, men and women's track field distance, and soccer. So I went to school at Cal State East Bay, grew up in Stockton area, California. I played soccer at Cal State East Bay. And then I took a year off after trying to figure out, hey, do I want to go back to school? Not. I feel like that gap year was much needed. And then decided I want to try to pursue my master's. That's why I ended up at Holy Names. I loved my time here. Obviously, with everything happening, it was really sad to say goodbye. But I'm hopefully planning on going back in the fall to get my master's again, Master's of Science in Kinesiology, with an emphasis in movement science.
So you mentioned a gap year. I mean, some people that either out of high school but also after college consider that. What would you recommend for those students that are thinking about taking a gap year?
If you think you need it, take it. I know some athletes, and some student athletes for sure, if I don't go to grad school right away, then I definitely need to, or if I don't go to grad school right away, then I'm not going to go at all. And I felt like I was that person. But in my field, especially, experience is so key. Graduating with a Bachelor's of Science in Kinesiology really feels like you're leaving with a high school education almost. There's not a lot that you can do without continued education there. And I had a really great gig at the time working with baseball sports performance. Really got my foot in the door and helped me figure out what I wanted to do. And when I left college, it was 2021, still kind of peak COVID. My mental health was pretty destroyed after undergrad. I feel like I went through a lot within those 4 years, and I really, really struggled. So I felt like that gap year was great. I also ended up going to a mental health facility for 4 months. I did that full-time for the first 2 months and then part-time for the second 2 while still working at that facility. And I think that was a massive reset for me. I don't think I would have been able to be successful in either strength and conditioning or in just continued education grad school at all if I didn't do that.
No, for sure. And we're definitely going to dive into a lot more of the mental health side of things later on. But I first wanted to kind of get your background into soccer and how that was to play collegiately at East Bay.
Yeah, I mean, growing up in the valley of California, Soccer was huge. I mean, I started playing hockey and soccer as a kid. So my dad was from East Coast, New York area. So we were big hockey players at the beginning and then transferred to soccer. I mean, everybody I knew played soccer growing up. And so I ended up playing through grade school, transferred to a competitive team. And for most of my life, my mom was a single mom, so she worked really, really hard to try to provide me that competitive soccer experience that is incredibly expensive and time consuming. So I really value my mom for pushing me so hard to my goals. I didn't really know what I wanted to do in terms of college. I had quite frankly thought I wasn't going to go. I loved school and I had decent grades, obviously played a sport as well, but I just felt I felt a little bit stuck, and that's kind of when my mental health started to take a downturn effect, was middle of high school. But Cal State East Bay ended up reaching out to me end of my last year, and we had talked a lot before. My sophomore year of college or high school, I was I'm going to school to play, and then my junior year, she's no. They reached back out and was hey, we still really want you, you want to come out. So I tried, I went to an ID camp there, Sonoma State, SF, just kind of seeing where I wanted to be. I love the Bay, and so ended up committing there. And I'm really grateful for the experience. I definitely had a unique experience. I wasn't able to play all of my years there, but I had a great time there for the year that I did play.
That's amazing. It's all about those experiences that you build, especially,
Yeah, and quite frankly, I don't think I would have gone to college if it wasn't for soccer. And I know a lot of student athletes feel the same
100%.
way, where it's hey, I might not have gone, but now it's set me up for success in my life. I'm so appreciative of that. It helped, one, pay for school when paying for school was not the easiest thing at the time.
Yeah.
And it allowed me to get my foot in the door with just being a student athlete, having a lot of structure in my first year, making friends, and also like figuring out who I wanted to be. So I'm very appreciative of that.
You mentioned those times of feeling stuck. Like, what were the things that you did to try to get out of that funk that you were in?
In high school, I definitely just tried to hit the gym. Like we got a grant from CrossFit in like 2008 at my high school to make it into like a CrossFit gym. By the time I was there, like 2015, we didn't really do CrossFit anymore, but we had this super sick weight room. And so instead of like regular PE classes, we did like body conditioning or like weightlifting classes. And so that was like our PE. And we were on semesters, so 4 classes a day for half a year and then another 4. So we had an hour and a half each period. So we had like weightlifting classes. And that's how I learned how to like squat, deadlift, like move my body, what it felt like to work out, how to build a workout, what nutrition was like. That class was everything for me. So then I ended up just hanging out with the teacher after class, like before soccer or something like that, and just lifted. Like I just learned how to move my body. I learned how to like program effectively for like other people and myself. Like I learned with a lot of trial and error what worked best for my body. And that was the one thing that saved me and really pushed me to think about, hey, maybe I can do like fitness related things for a living, especially focusing on athletes.
Okay, so you're bringing up lifting, which is something I've actually wanted to touch on today in this episode. Lifting is often overlooked with a lot of athletes, especially now. And I can even admit for myself that in high school, I wasn't lifting a lot. I didn't really take that part of it super seriously. And that's honestly, looking back high school, one of my bigger regrets was not taking lifting as seriously.
Yeah.
And then now coming here to school where we're lifting, and that's a part of our in-season plan and off-season plan. Like lifting is so huge. So I wanted to ask you to just speak to the importance of lifting in order to perform in sports.
Strength and conditioning is so important. It's not just because it's my job. Statistically speaking, like when we think about injury prevention, first of all, and then athletic performance, we always tier it that way, right? Injury prevention is number 1 first and foremost, and then we think about athletic development and performance. It has been life-changing to see like how much it has done for me in terms of like preventing injuries as both a college athlete and now like an elite weightlifter, and then at the same time like being able to apply that to my athletes as well. When we're looking at strength and conditioning, the amount of times that you're lifting and what you're doing in the weight room, especially as a college athlete, is 100% curated to that person's needs and that team need. You're never going to be like overproducing volume or like choosing weights that are like poorly connected to what you should be doing. And if you have a good or like a quality strength and conditioning coach, all of that is chosen and individualized for you based on things that you need. And that's the difference between just going to the gym and loading up 225 on a bench press and bench pressing it for 4 sets or whatever you're doing. Like this is so critical to your success. Like when we think about even in basketball, we're thinking about you both have like force related injuries. So when you're like jumping, landing, cutting, turning, and then you also have overuse injuries. The amount of times that I've seen somebody come in with like chronic knee pain, ankle pain that was or is an elite basketball player, it's really crazy to see how little that they've done in the weight room to like benefit themselves in that way. I think it's really, really important that we also educate people on it. I think a lot of times when I come in, if I don't give athletes a why behind their doing these exercises, like for example, when we're working with baseball and we're looking at pitchers, like the hand position that we use when we're doing like pressing exercises, like 2-to-1 pull to push ratio, like things like that. Why are we doing these things? The buy-in is so much more like effective and positive if I'm telling athletes why they're doing something. More often than not, that gets really overlooked, and some people are like, we do it because we are told to do it, or it's because I said so. But in reality, like athletes want to do it if they know why it's important and what it's doing to benefit them. So the best thing I can say is ask your strength coach why. Like if you're doing exercises, you're doing different programming, ask them why you're doing this, and they should be able to scientifically come with a like evidence-based reason of why you're doing this workout and how it's going to benefit you on the court.
No, for sure. And something I did want to circle back to is, what would you say to the athletes that maybe don't have the resources of a strength and conditioning coach necessarily? They're getting in the gym and they're just doing those, putting those weights on, just doing the bench press, stuff like that. Like, what is the best way for them to learn and get involved to, build a weight plan to start, in high school, like for the kids that don't have those resources?
Yeah, I mean, it is very common for people to not have like the financial access to these really insane sports performance facilities. I was also never the one to have access to that, and so I completely like side with those athletes that are really trying. And it's because it's so important. It's important that we have like easier accessible resources. Some of my favorite resources are looking up different, even just going onto different college strength and conditioning websites. You can see they'll usually have a pyramid of what their training philosophy is, what they like to do. So if you're like potentially looking at colleges, you can see on some sites exactly what they're looking for out of
Coach Moy actually did that with me. He sent me like a whole bunch of YouTube videos
yeah.
to look at.
And just being able to be like, okay, I know that these colleges prioritize XYZ. The second thing is being able to understand exactly what you're looking for based off of like journal research articles. So if you look up basketball summer strength and conditioning and on Google Scholar, you'll actually pull up a lot of good information. And I know as a high schooler, sifting through peer-reviewed articles is not the best thing, but that is the easiest way to get like really brief access. Also, they usually have like tables in there as well that are like, hey, studies have shown in success that these certain exercises are going to be proven in this journal article to do to be effective for strength and conditioning for basketball in the summer. So I recommend that as well. And the last thing is just stick to the basics, right? When we're looking at what basketball really is, you need to do a couple things, right? When we're looking at lower body, you have to have the lower body strength that's required and also the mobility. Then when we're thinking about like moving our upper body, I always like to say like 2-to-1 pull to push ratio. So think about 2 sessions that you're doing like upper body posterior, so like back exercises, and 1-to-1 like chest exercise. That is so critical for basketball athletes, and I think that's often overlooked because these are what we call our show muscles, and the muscles in our back like hamstring, glutes, lats, rhomboids are all our go muscles. So what's really going to keep you strong, healthy, and safe is all in the back of your body. So that's my biggest tip for people as well getting into the gym.
No doubt. I mean, it's also, is it different for every sport? Because I know you're talking about basketball, but like, what would you advise runners, swimmers, like those? Is it different for every? And it's gonna be hard to go into all of them right now, of course. But I mean, for more specific sports like golf athletes, stuff like that, because we have all 13 of those sports here at school, and I think art has the same. It does it look different for every sport?
It does. And when you get to the collegiate level, that's really when you can sport specify. But I think early sport specification is also kind of a hit or miss thing. I know it's really cool to see athletes specializing in sports at like 10, 12, like 13 years old. But at the same time, you lose out on a lot of that general athleticism. So anybody who's looking to go to college to play a sport, I always think, number one, keep it simple. KISS method, like try to find ways that you can hit maybe full body workouts every single day. Anything that's so highly sport specific, you just might not be at the level to even complete it to get enough benefit. So keep it simple, focus on your mobility. That's the one thing a lot of athletes lack these days, especially because we're like this over computers and laptops.
About stretching, rolling.
Yes, stretching, foam rolling, like doing the sleep, nutrition, the water, doing the simple things better. Right, when you're looking at a workout, full body workouts are totally okay for athletes these days, especially before you get to the college level. And on top of that, just making sure you're prioritizing like the little things. And so even when the early sports specification and like those really crazy Instagram exercises you see pop up on your feed, know that like the simple things done well are going to be the most effective as you transition into the college level for any sport.
Especially even just doing like body weight exercises, like get your squats, lunges, push-ups, planks, like just doing that, as long as you're doing something, I think is the most important thing, along with stretching.
And like that's the thing too. I mean, I've seen so many athletes come in and not have the hamstring flexibility to do half of our like single leg, like unilateral leg exercises correctly. A lot of our athletes can't come in and squat with a like decent technique, not because they don't know how to squat, it's because that they have limited mobility. Right, a lot of these injuries that we see comes from like lack of mobility and like poor body control, and those are all things you can work on that are body weight at home, like free online and stuff like that. So I always highly recommend that. A like strong and mobile athlete coming in with just the basics intact is going to be much easier for me to work with, and you have a much better baseline than somebody who's like, I hit chest 3 days a week and legs 3 days a week. I want somebody that comes in with a good base.
I mean, I'm going to be completely honest. I fall victim to not stretching every night sometimes. I know how important it is. I truly
We
know.
all are.
Yeah, of course. And even like sleep sometimes gets so inconsistent because, what we're about to dive into more is just balancing, really busy lifestyles and stuff like
Yeah.
that as student athletes and, busy people in general. But it's hard to get that stretching every night or to get, sleep when you're worried about writing a paper or worried about all these other things. So, I mean, for people that maybe, like, what is like the number one thing that people can do, whether it be stretching wise, sleep wise, or is it all a little bit of both?
I would say there's importance in everything, but if you're going to do one thing correctly all the time, it's going to be sleep. Sleep has, besides limiting stress, but that's very challenging.
Of course.
Sleep has so many benefits, and I think as students, especially like junior and senior year of high school now, is crazy hard. I am always shocked to see
Lots of AP classes and stuff like that.
like AP class are using literal college textbooks. Like,
Oh,
it's
for
so
sure.
crazy
Yeah.
how much time and energy that like these student athletes are putting in even at the high school level. But if you can try to just set your timers for 9-10 p.m., at least be in bed, be off your phone 30 minutes early, try to do all the little sleep things correctly, it's going to take you so far in terms of recovery. There's only so much ice rolling, foam rolling, Theragun, like lacrosse balling that you can do that will make up for lack of sleep.
100%. And I mean, even like my younger brother who's a junior now in high school, and he's writing papers at 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. And I'm like, dude, you got to go to bed because he's super busy too. Like, he works incredibly hard on so many different things. And he's like writing papers and worried about assignments and a math test. And it's like, he's not even necessarily an athlete. He's involved with like theater and things like that. But just as a student, it's such a big, course load. So it's like in high school and then going to college where every class is like that. You can only imagine like the stress and, time management and things like that.
And what happens in college is that you have a little less structure, right? Because you're living on your own, you get to pick some of your class times, and all like structure of, hey, I'm going to high school 7:30 to 2 p.m. and then I have this and this after flies out the window. So especially when you get into college, there's obviously things that we can't control, but when you get into college, try to find those sleep and wake routines. I know athletes that go to bed at 2 a.m. but don't wake up till 10, 11 a.m. in the morning, and that can be really challenging because then they're like rushing to class, rushing to practice, not eating breakfast, like not doing the little things right. I think at the end of the day, if you can just try to set a consistent time to go to bed and wake up as much as you can, obviously minus like those midterm papers and things like that, you're going to be in such a better mental headspace to complete what you have to do during the day.
And the reality too is if you're going to bed early or later one night, but you force yourself to wake up early the next day, you will feel tired around 9, 10, 10:30, 11 in some cases. Like, you will get tired. Like, naturally your body will try to get into that normal structure, like if you do it for so long. Like, for me, I'm trying to restructure my sleep cycles a little bit more by waking up at like 7:30 every morning rather than 9, where I feel like then I'm chasing my whole day after that.
Oh yeah. And
You know
I mean,
what
one of the biggest and easiest ways to start going to bed at a consistent time is to get off your phone. And I know
100%.
that's so hard
Yes.
to say, but screens like TVs, phones, all that stuff, like try to put it away 30 minutes before bed. I like try to put it away before you brush your teeth, wash your face, whatever it is. Get into bed, read a little bit, do a craft or an activity, or just lay in the bed and stare at the ceiling. The first week is going to be pretty miserable doing that, especially like not scrolling on TikTok before you sleep. But at the end of the day, that is going to be so beneficial. And by week 2, week 3, like your sleep cycle is going to improve so much to where you really don't feel like you need to be on your phone a lot, or you don't feel like, hey, I'm sitting there twiddling my thumbs for an hour and a half before I fall asleep. And that is such a relieving feeling, knowing that when I'm tired enough during the day, I put my phone away and I know I'm going to be able to sleep.
100%. Would you agree that nothing good comes after 10 o'clock at night? That was like a basic rule of thumb.
Like if you would ask me that in college, I would have probably said something different. But looking back now, I definitely think like, yes, like in terms of like what cycles your body goes through on the daily, like you need to be in bed by like 10:30 at the latest, kind of depending on what your sport requires from you in the morning.
Unless you're getting that paper done or you're actually doing something that's
and
important.
like that's the thing too, like there's always going to be exceptions, right? If I'm sitting here preaching like, oh my gosh, you have to fall asleep by 9:30 or 10.
It's just not going to happen.
It's not going to happen every night. Like, I mean, like last week I was up late, working on my computer like 11 p.m. and I was like, my goodness. But I went straight from the screen to sleep and then it messed me up for that next day. So now it's like, because I'm trying to like complete that habit. Now it's like when I don't do it, it feels off. It feels weird, right? It's like kind of when you're used to eating breakfast before you lift and one day you wake up late and you don't, that lift is going to feel super challenging. That's the same way, right? Your body's going to respond to that routine that you give it. So when you get out of the routine, it's really easy to fall back in because you're like, I feel so much better when I do it, right? And that's what we try to like hone in on, is like doing the little things better in order to feel better consistently throughout the day.
So, I mean, I did want to transition to a little bit here and talk about, the balancing act. We kind of started talking about it a little bit, but specifically, what did you find worked for you in terms of, balancing your family, school, your sports, other life issues? Like, what worked for you?
I would say I didn't do that well the first time. And
Yeah,
I actually
absolutely.
didn't really do that well until I got to grad school and until I started working in strength and conditioning. And it was very much a learning curve, and it still is, right? But I think one of the things that works well for me is putting work away. So for student athletes, putting school away at a certain time. I always found that I would sit and work on a paper for 6 hours and probably get about 2.5 hours of quality work done. So what I would do is there's like these focus timers online. You focus for like 30 minutes and it kind of shuts down part of your screen on your laptop. And then you get like a 5-minute break and you do that on and off. And that helped me save so much time.
More efficient too.
Yes, because I know people that are like, well, I'm sitting here working on this paper for 12 hours. And I'm like, in reality, like how many of those 12 hours are we getting quality work in? If you split it up into times, then you're able to put it away, right?
Because here's what happens. Sometimes you're on your computer up here and your phone's over here, and then you start and people are counting that time on their phone as
like
working
I'm
on
working.
the paper.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I was so guilty of that and still am sometimes, but those focus timers have helped me a lot. And then putting work away and allowing me to do something fun with like my friends or like whatever, it has helped me so much. Like for example, I know you've had Katie on the podcast before. I go out with a couple other coaches and athletic trainers, and we go to dinner every single Wednesday. It's something that's like penciled in to my calendar. It's like I know at 6:30 p.m. every single Wednesday I'm going to dinner with them, so my work needs to be done by 6 so then I can like get ready and leave. And that has helped me so much with one, like keeping consistent friendships, which was always really hard for me.
Yeah.
And number 2, being able to allot time for myself to experience like enjoying myself on a weeknight, which I never felt like I could because I wasn't effective enough with my work. So that helped me a ton. I also think scheduling time for myself. Sometimes it feels better to be with people all the time, but if you can't enjoy time for yourself, like sometimes it can catch up to you. So I found like different crafts. I'm not very good at crafts,
Neither am I.
but it's like something fun that I do. I'm not necessarily good at doing hand embroidery, but I do it because it's fun and it's something that gets me away from screens and allows me to spend some time with myself. Or I'll try to go on a walk and get my steps in. Whatever works that I can spend time with myself, like appreciating the time that I have and not necessarily like, man, none of my friends want to hang out with me tonight or can hang out with me tonight, so now I have to spend this time alone. You should really try to capitalize on being comfortable with yourself.
It's all about the way you view it and the way you shape it, because the way you put it, it was brilliant. I love that, if you phrase it as, oh man, no one wants to hang out with me, then you're feeling sad, and then you're just sitting in the fact that no one wants to hang out with you. Like, no one wants to feel like that. People want to feel accepted. They want to feel loved. To feel like that
100%.
really sucks. So, I mean, being comfortable being alone in the sense of, at the end of the day, all we have is ourselves, and like that conversation in our mind is always going. So if you can be comfortable just in your own space, and that's something I've learned here. Like I have my own dorm room now, and my roommate left, shout out Trey Wilborn. It's just now I'm kind of figuring out what it's like to be on my own. So it's like I capitalize, I set up the podcast in here, push the beds together. I got like, I stretch out, in the open space every night. So just figuring out little things that can make it feel a little bit more homey and stuff like that, and just be okay, like in my own space.
Doing like a little passion project or something on the side that you can feel proud of. Who cares if you're not I'm speaking and I work at an art school, so I'm literally working with legit artists. And
Yeah.
so, but like I never try to get down on myself if I'm not good at a little task or passion project that I'm doing, because I also think that's the best way that I can feel accomplished with myself. Like working in support staff, so like athletic trainers, strength and conditioning, it can get really challenging, right? Because we are essentially the back end of it. If you're thinking in the way of like putting on a theater like play or production, we're the one that's like doing the curtains, doing the lights in the back, and you know, when it comes like closing time to like game days, things like that, we're really kind of just in the shadows. And so it can get really challenging sometimes for me to be like, you did such a good job today, Kaleigh, at work. And so one of the things that helps me so much is just being able to kind of relax and do a little project of mine on my own that I can feel really proud of. And so that's helped me a lot. And also just not having to think strength and conditioning, or not having to think work or school all the time, like giving my mind just a little bit of a break. So
sometimes that's all it needs to reset. And honestly, you'll be better at, you know, those things that you're thinking about. Like, you'll be better with strength and conditioning, or I'll be better with basketball, whatever sport, you know, you're playing, if you allow yourself that time to really, you know, rest.
Yeah, I hear athletes all the time, I live, eat, sleep, and breathe my sport. And I'm like, yes, that's good until your sport's not going well, or until, like, if I'm working with distance runners, until you haven't PR'd in a year, which is really common. Like, it's
those
not
long dry spells.
Yes, or like it's going really well until I haven't seen the court in 3-4 months. And then because you live, eat, sleep, and breathe this sport or this environment, your mental health will just start to crush you. And so there's beauty in having balance. And I think that is something that I've recently learned. And I think it's always going to be a work in progress with everybody. There's always going to be things that have to take more of your time in certain areas, or like being able to allocate like different things, like getting in new relationships, or being able to like tack on another class, or being involved in like clubs or things outside of your sport as well. They can seem really daunting at the beginning, but it is a great way to make friends that are not involved in your sport, which is so important, because then you have friends that aren't talking about the sport all the time. And then it's also a good way for you to find and develop different interests, because at the end of the day, like, we are all athletes, but someday that sport is going to end elite professionally, or
Absolutely.
like collegiately for you. And so what do you have for yourself that's outside of being an athlete? Because when it ended for me, I had nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was one of the things that made my mental health plummet so much, was like, I'm nothing without my sport. And now I'm like, hey, if I'm not a strength and conditioning coach anymore, I'm still a good friend. I'm still a good partner to my girlfriend. Like, I'm still like enjoying doing little tasks. Like, I still like to go on walks, and I'm still a cat mom. Like, all these cool things.
I love it.
Where like, if I left college, and when I left college athletics, I'm like, I am nothing. And so like, involving yourself in other things and with other people that are not directly involved in your sport is so critical at any level.
That was a seamless transition to just what I wanted to talk about, which is how you are not defined by your sport. You are playing that sport. So
Yes.
people that you pour all this time into your whole life, training and preparing, your sport does not define that kind of person you are. You know, for student athletes, sometimes like, we need to hear that. Like, you know, your performance in your sport, yes, you want to perform, you want to play well, you want to get your PR, but at the end of the day, you as a person, you're not defined by your performance, you're not defined by that sport. I think that's really important for, you know, athletes to hear.
Yeah, and I think a great example of that is some of the people, the kindest, sweetest people that I've ever met in college athletics in terms of athletes, are the ones that ride the bench for most of the year, are the ones that may not have as much playing time as others. They are some of the most happy-go-lucky, kind-hearted, just happy to be involved type of people. And I know how hard of a role that is to play. Like, when you're the one that is not the starter, and maybe the number one person on the team is playing in your position above you, like, you know it's going to be a year, maybe coming in freshman, sophomore year, transfer year, that you're not going to have a lot of like time on the court or on the field, whatever. And they still like make the best of it, and they still show mad love to like the teammates and to the school that they're playing for, and just are so happy to be involved. Like, those are the type of people that everybody should strive to be. There are people who are going to be talented. There are people that are going to come in that are taller, stronger, better than you. But nobody can outwork like the good personality, the willing to give what you can, and the willingness to be a team player. And that goes super far in terms of like looking at the development of like a wholehearted person when it comes to athletics. Like, when those people leave like athletics, they know how to be a team player. They know how to communicate. They know how to uplift others. And I really sincerely hope that they're also taking care of themselves, because that is a really challenging spot to be in. But those are the athletes that I always love, is the people who understand like how it feels to be that like critical team player role.
and not everyone's going to be going pro. So it's like it's about that journey. There's experiences, whoever you may meet. And I mean, for me, as a redshirt on our men's basketball team this year, I got to learn a lot, be a sponge, and soak things up. But at the same time, everyone else is getting ready for a game that I've been putting all the same work as them. I've been practicing with them. I've been lifting with them. But sit the bench. I mean, I knew
It's hard.
I knew what the deal was coming in. But still, it was about the experiences and like all the guys I got to meet, and and a lot of them are now like mentors I talk to. Just back and forth stuff like that. It's about that journey. It's not about the end destination, because not everyone's going pro. Not everyone's going to be able to get paid to do this.
Yeah. And if you think about this, like, college athletics is really similar to like a workplace. Like, working, obviously I work really closely with collegiate athletics because I am at a college, but like being kind to other teams, like working together, like being able to, you might be putting in a little bit more effort certain times than other times to take over a role. Like if somebody gets hurt and you have to step up and like be that player on the court where you may not have been before, like those are things that happen in the workplace as well. Sports really prepare you for being like a quality employee, like taking care of like your friendships and things like that. When you start to work like full-time jobs and stuff like that, like friendships kind of fly out the window at the beginning. So learning time management skills, all this stuff that you learn in collegiate athletics or athletics in general, set you up for success in the real world. And so if you can really apply those things that you learn and truly be able to, like you said, like be a sponge, soak up all of those things, it's really easy to transferable to the workforce and whatever you want to choose to do after. And your passion for whatever sport will transfer to whatever you do in the future as well.
And you have to be able to connect with different people. You have to make relationships with your coach, AD, compliance, your advisors, counselors. Like you have to be able to make all these relationships and connections. And at the end of the day, whatever you're going in, whatever your jobs are, you have to have those people skills. And as student athletes, we get a great, tribe. We get a great warm up into some of those aspects for like job building.
100%. Like you're not always going to be, like you might not always have your favorite coach ever, or you might have an athlete on your team that's like, hey, like I really struggle making connections with this athlete, or I'm under pressure, like we're losing, I feel really uncomfortable, I feel really upset, I'm on the court, we're losing by 10, I want to have a big outburst. Like a lot of those things happen in the workforce and just regular life too. Like you being able to manage yourself under stress and pressure, and also be able to form relationships and work with people that might not be your favorite person outside of that team or workplace is really important, and so I think that college athletics does teach you a lot about that. I think the one thing that college athletics could do a little bit better in preparing you for the future is probably on the mental health side of things. I have seen it quite often, and I try my best personally to like help mitigate and like stop any sort of like severe mental health issues that I see. But at the end of the day, like sometimes college athletics and athletics in general, with everything else on your plate, will just get to you.
Absolutely. And I mean, you're kind of talking about that a little bit more, is like, what's your advice to, student athletes who are either struggling with injuries or setbacks, in their training or in their sport, or setbacks like mentally? What is your approach or advice to those student athletes?
Yeah. I'll put my little strength and conditioning hat on for a second. Do the work that needs to be done behind the scenes. Like go to the athletic trainers, put in the work in the weight room, sleep, eat well, like focus on your like road to physical recovery, do the things that are required of you, because I know a lot of people who are injured and don't see the athletic trainer 4 to 5 days a week like they should be, aren't coming in the weight room doing what they can. Everybody else is like progressing outside of you as well. So if you have a torn ACL, knock on wood, that's like a really terrible injury, but if you have a torn ACL, like there are things you can still do to get better and things that you can still do for rehab that I don't think enough people like do, and it's really challenging mentally, but I think that is one thing that you should be pushing yourself to do. And in terms of the mental health side of it, ask for help. And that was something that was so hard for me. Mm-hmm. I didn't ask for help until my mental health was so bad that I like had to take a little vacation to a facility. And I think that, I don't know if it like could have ever been avoided or not. Like it's hard to think about alternate universes.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, like I wish I would have asked for help, because there were a lot of people that were willing to help me. And a lot of really knowledgeable people as well. School counseling services are great. There's a lot of free or reduced cost like opportunities out there, especially in the Bay Area. There's a lot of like links and resources that you have access to as a student, as like part of the Bay Area community as an athlete, like there's all different types of things that you can utilize for free or reduced cost therapy that I think will work wonders. But when we get to therapy, like you have to put in the work as well. You have to be ready and willing to accept that this is going to be a very challenging journey. And like, how do you navigate this space? Like for a lot of people, mental health is not talked about. And quite frankly, up until the past 2 or 3 years, mental health was never been talked about in sports.
No, it's really gotten a lot more, you hear a lot more about it now, but even there's still some things that are kind of swept under the rug.
So much, yeah. And so I definitely think that asking for help is the number one thing. And a lot of athletes, or a lot of coaches these days, we go through a lot of trainings to make sure that we can have our athletes be as supported as possible. And it can be really challenging as a coach because we do care a lot about you and we really want you to feel okay and be comfortable. But advocate for yourself in terms of your mental health, and coaches are trained to assist you and to help you find resources. And if you need to take time off, if you need a break, please tell somebody, because as coaches, we never want you to get to the point where you feel like you're so burnt out or so mentally down that you're things are starting to fall out of place, right? And that's really where I think the biggest roadblock is the asking for help and who to ask.
So yeah, absolutely do not be afraid to ask for help. Always reach out. There's always people there willing to help. I think that's a very important message to get across.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, what would you want your take-home message away to be from people that have heard a little bit about your story, or just anything about you? What do you think is your message that you want to give off to student athletes or anyone listening?
I think from the personal standpoint, I think the most important thing is to advocate for yourself. You are human. Life is very challenging as you start to transition from the high school to college level, just for students, let alone tagging on athletics on top of that. So advocate for yourself. Make sure that you're setting good boundaries with yourself, your professors, your athletics, and your friends, and making sure that you feel well prepared for the transitions that come. And then in a strength and conditioning sense, mobility, and do your rehab, and
yes,
and make sure that you're doing everything that you can to set yourself up to be the best athlete that you can be.
Those little things, the details.
Yeah, if you look back on your season, let's say you finish your freshman and sophomore season, you look back and be like, maybe I didn't have the outcome I wanted, but I did every single thing I could to make sure that I was the best athlete possible. Then you did what you could. If you showed up to every weight session, if you did all of your rehab and athletic training, if you try to monitor your sleep, obviously the best of your ability, you ate well, you practiced hard, you pushed yourself, and you took care of yourself both mentally and physically, you did everything you could do. But sometimes it's challenging because a lot of athletes will look back and be like, I could have done better. So take that with a grain of salt and refocus for your next season.
At the end of the day, that's all we can really do.
Yeah.
So as we're kind of coming to a close here, I feel like this has flown by. We like to close out these interviews with 3 little quick hitter questions. So try to answer as quick as you can and as honest as you can. All right. So the first one: what is your number one favorite exercise to do?
Front squat.
Front squat. Nice. What is your go-to pump up song while you're in the gym?
Anything by Key Glock. He's my favorite.
Okay, awesome. And what is your one guilty pleasure that you allow yourself on cheat days?
Oh, a good burrito.
Okay.
A good burrito from La Grulo in Oakland.
Oh, sweet. Our Bay Area spot.
Yep.
I love it. All right, those are great answers. Great job. Thank you again so much for, joining me here today and taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I thought you had a great insight on mental health side of things, the training side of things. So just thank you so much for the time. Did you have any closing thoughts or shout outs you wanted to give before we hop off?
I definitely appreciate being here. It's really cool to see you pursuing your passions and your dreams, and this is really going to, this is huge for you, and so I'm super proud of you. And, my favorite quote I like to think about, as ending and to be kind to myself and mental health is, focus on what is beneath you as you take this step, not what is a mile down the road.
Oh, man, I love that. That's
you.
Brilliant. Again, thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in today to today's episode. Anyone listening, please, if you heard anything from today's episode, reach out to @TrueToLife Podcast. Tag us. Get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much, and we're gonna be back soon.
Thank you.